Okay. Shouldn't take me. There's a lot of slides left, but it shouldn't take me that long to get through all of these. So I will try to get through the lecture, and then I think I've got the 2 videos posted to D2L already. Like I think I did that this morning, but I will go back and check. All right. So the next civil rights issue that we're going to cover here is marriage. Okay? Again, we're talking about civil rights. So as a reminder, since we've been talking about this for a few days now, civil rights are protections, or they are not protections. They are privileges. I think that actually might be the best way of trying to explain this to you. Provided to sort of one subset of the population, right? So for a long time, interracial marriage was illegal. There was a number of states in which it was still illegal. Loving versus Virginia is a Supreme Court case, probably a case actually worth knowing, right? In which a white man and black woman were married in Virginia. Well, they're actually married in D.C. They lived in Virginia. This is actually really well, it shouldn't be that complicated. Okay, you understand that if you get married, like let's say you get drunk in Vegas and get married, right? You understand you married everywhere, right? You understand that? Right? Okay. So, one, just so you understand, this is actually how this becomes like a federal issue, right? Because they get married in D.C., they live in Virginia, their marriage is illegal in the state of Virginia, okay? Which is part of the way we got around gay marriage years later, right? Because there were certain states that were providing for gay unions, right? I believe Hawaii was actually the first state to legalize gay marriage. In which case, if you lived, like let's just say you lived in Texas, right? You flew to Hawaii, you had a wedding, right? Like you exchanged vows, you signed a piece of paper, you were legally married. You come back to Texas, is your marriage valid? According to Texas state law, no. Okay? This is a double-edged, or this is like a 2-pronged issue now, right? One, you understand, well, actually, maybe you don't understand this. You know why I got married? Tax breaks. I'm kidding. But I'm not giving those up. I'm not. Right? Like, I get tax breaks for having gotten married. Right? The government incentivizes marriage because they believe that I'll be a more productive citizen if I have a wife nagging me to come home every day. Right? So I'm not out, getting drunk every night. You know that's the actual reason, right? Yes. One of the actual reasons why, y'all don't learn this in history class? Y'all don't learn in history that women are the morally superior species? That supposedly without women we would all be immoral heathens, just not even a step above animals, just animals. Men would just be animals. Right? Just going around eating, killing, taking, whatever. Women are what prevent men from doing that, yes? There's an actual belief in that. That's one of the reasons why the government will incentivize marriage. And the government incentivizes things via tax breaks. And here's the thing though, once you start providing tax breaks for some subset of the population, you have to provide tax breaks for everybody who wants to engage in the same behavior. And that's discrimination. Discrimination is a civil rights issue. Okay? But then there's a second issue that comes into this as well. It's constitutional in nature. And that is, when we go back and we look at the Constitution from Unit 1, do we remember the full faith and privilege clause? Okay. Raise your hand if you have a driver's license. Right? So, when you are driving, right, and you're on a college visit and you're going to go visit Louisiana Lafayette, when you get to the Louisiana border, how many of you stop and park your car and start walking because you can't drive in Louisiana because you have a Texas driver's license?
Wait,
I'm being sarcastic, girl.
okay, sorry.
Yes, you can drive in every state with a Texas driver's license. Okay? That's full faith and credit. If you have met the requirements here, you can engage in the same behaviors there. Okay? So if I legally got married here, am I legally married somewhere else? What if that state says no? This actually gets really fascinating when you learn about things like common law marriages. Anybody know what a common law marriage is? Okay, so you have an idea, right? Like, every state's a little different. Anybody? So Texas has common law marriages. Do you know what it takes to have a common law marriage in Texas? You have to cohabitate for 1 day. If you move in with somebody, right? You have a common law marriage. So here's the thing. That's the little stipulation. You actually have to tell people you're married. But do not do this in college, like joking around, like this is the wifey, right? Like we're roommates and nope. You have now admitted to somebody you were married. You are legally married in the state of Texas.
But that's just one-sided though. What if the other person?
Well, if they agree, like if you two together say that you are like even though you're just roommates, like you're wifeys, like then you're married. Right? You have a common law marriage. Do you know what it takes to end a common law marriage? Ain't no such thing as a common law divorce.
Oh, so you got to get an actual divorce?
Well, no, you can get an actual divorce, but you've got to go through the legal paperwork to get an actual divorce.
Even though there was no paperwork to get married.
So if you have to be cohabitating. You have to be living with the person. If you are living with another human being, and you and that human being tell 3 different people that y'all are married, whether you signed the paper or not.
Just because you live together and you said that you're
And because you said it.
But like,
Yes, ma'am.
getting a divorce.
Well, here's the thing. One, I would assume that if you were getting a divorce, right, then it's because it's contentious, right? Because if you think about this for a second, and you live with somebody for 5 years, right, and you built a life with them, you have all kinds of joint property at that point, yes? Like, you might have bought a bed together, you might have bought a dresser together, you might have bought, like, dishes, whatever, like, appliances, I don't know. How are you going to separate those? If y'all don't agree to it, like, just amicably, and you want to get the courts involved, and they were like, no, we were actually married, like, let's just assume for the sake, like, because I'm going to be wildly, like, sexistly stereotypical for a minute. Like, let's just assume that you were the woman in this situation, right? So, but we're going to assume that, like, he's the one with the better paying job, right? So he's the one that actually purchased a whole bunch of this stuff, right? And again, because we're being sexist, we're going to assume that he's the one that cheated, right? So you're like, I want a divorce, right? Are you entitled to half of that stuff? Yeah. Is he going to want to give you half? No. But you can take him to court over it. And so long as you can provide 3 witnesses that said that y'all claimed to be married, then you were married. You want to hand up over here.
I was saying, so you have to like file papers to get divorced for a marriage that wasn't filed in papers?
Correct. Here's actually the really fun thing, right? Because I used to teach in North Carolina. North Carolina does not recognize common law marriages, period. In North Carolina, you can cohabitate forever. You ain't married. Right? You can pretend to be like, we're married. No, you're not. Don't matter if you claim to be married. You're not married in North Carolina. Right? But Virginia had common law marriages. You had to live together for 7 years. Right? Once you hit that 7-year mark in Virginia, you married. Like, sorry, it was poop or get off the pot time. You didn't get off the pot, so you married. Right? Like.
Wait, so they have the common law marriage, but.
Well, here's the kicker. If you had a common law marriage in Virginia and then you moved to North Carolina, are you married?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Because the common law marriage in Virginia still applies in North Carolina, even though North Carolina does not recognize, does not provide their own common law marriages. they will recognize a marriage from another state even if it was common law.
Does every state do that?
The full faith and credit clause says you have to recognize what has occurred in other states. My wife and I, for instance, we didn't get married in Texas, right? But obviously we are married in Texas.
Where'd y'all get married?
We actually got married in Vegas.
Vegas?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's
Dude, weddings in Vegas are cheap.
oh,
Nice
Vegas
weddings
not
are cheap in Vegas.
Really?
Yeah, like we didn't get married by some Elvis impersonator. No. My wife would probably have
I see that.
strung me up by my pinkies if I tried to do that. Right? Very traditional. Like I got down on one knee
I know, but like where? In a church.
at her parents.
Oh.
In front of her parents.
Like holding someone up.
No, her brothers weren't there. Alright, I wasn't that nervous until I asked for her parents' blessing, and then her mom was like, "Do you really think she'll say yes?" And I was like, I thought she was going to until you said that.
You have a UNC customized suit?
Shocker.
No, but she did the what do they call them, like the
Bridesmaid?
garters?
Yeah.
Her garter was a UNC garter, so I have a UNC garter. Anyway,
Oh.
all right, we're wildly off topic now, talking about my marriage. Okay, I do want to get to this because this is a civil rights issue as well, right? When we talk about incarceration and then disenfranchisement, do we know what disenfranchisement means? The removal of voting rights. Okay? So, I want you to understand that if you are incarcerated, if you are a felon, okay, in some states you cannot vote while you are a felon. Okay? In some, and it just depends, it depends on the states, and I think I have it, I don't know, maybe it's not in this PowerPoint, maybe it's in another one of my PowerPoints. I have a map that shows you, like, that I can put up, that shows you by state, like, these are the states where you can never, ever, ever, ever vote again if you're a felon. These are the states where you can vote, like, once you're off probation. These are the states you can vote once you're out of prison. These are the states, there's like 3. I don't want to compete. There are like, I think there's 2 or 3 states that you can actually vote from jail. Like if you are incarcerated, you can mail in a ballot from jail and still
Yeah, that
vote.
was my next question.
What?
That was my next question.
It just depends, because voting is a state issue, okay? So I want you to understand that. All right, so when we're extending civil rights, you do need to realize this. There are sort of 3 levels, right? 3 tests. We call this scrutiny, okay? So scrutiny, I think we at least mentioned it yesterday or the day before. We talked about burden of proof, yes? That term came up. Okay, so here's the thing. If the government is going to discriminate against a subset of the population, the burden of proof falls upon the government. And now, the lowest level of scrutiny is really just a rational basis test. Can you drink alcohol at 12? No. No, you cannot. Your liver is not developed. Can you drive a car at 8? No. Nobody wants to see my 8-year-old driving an automobile. Okay? That would be terrifying. Okay? Those are rationally sound. You understand that? Like, that's just, it just logically makes sense. Yes? Okay. Intermediate scrutiny basically says that the government can discriminate if there's an important governmental interest in creating the discrimination. Okay? Alright? And then the highest level is strict scrutiny, which means that there has to be a compelling, which means essential governmental interest. This is what gets difficult in this day and age. See, these are just graphs. Alright, so this brings us back to women and gender discrimination. Some of this is historical that I don't care about, right? Yes, in the 70s we created NOW, which is the National Organization for Women. I want you to be at least aware that in the 1970s we wrote something called the Equal Rights Amendment that we tried to get ratified onto the Constitution. It passed Congress, but it was never ratified. It fell short of the number of states necessary for ratification. All right, the reality is, I don't know that an ERA was really necessary. Right? The 14th Amendment provides equal protection for all citizens. Women are citizens, therefore women have equal protection. I don't think we need a separate amendment specifically saying women have equal rights. Okay? We just need to apply the law correctly. Alright? This is gonna bring us to trans rights, which is obviously significantly more important now than it used to be. Right? Because it was not, I mean, it wasn't nearly as prominent back then. Right? The Civil Rights Act of '64 does make it illegal to discriminate based on religion, color, sex, race, yada, yada, yada. Okay? Then the question becomes, I mean, like, just so we're clear, right? When you put color, race, and national origin, like what, can somebody explain to me the difference between those? Yes, ma'am?
Color is the, wait, you said color, race, color, understand. Wait, what was the rest of them?
So, no, it's on the board, right? So literally we're writing in there, like, you cannot discriminate on employment for the basis of color, nationality, or race. But,
Color would be like your complexion.
no, I get that, like, that's a pigmentation thing, right? Like, we're really talking about the amount of melanin in your skin at that point,
Yeah.
right? But, like, my question is, isn't it a little redundant to put color and race in there?
I mean,
So, like, well, I mean, this is sort of my question then, right? So, like, if I only hired, like, light-skinned black people, right? Well, I'm not discriminating based on race now, am I?
no, but it's still like.
Well, okay, I don't know. I mean, like, I'm like white bread white, right? Like, do we do that? Is there a differentiation? I don't know if it's one of those things, and again, your reading for Monday is getting into this concept. It's a semantics concept. Do we know what semantics is?
No.
Semantics means the meaning of words. Okay? Right? Semantics arguments are really arguments over the definition of verbiage and like how you're using a word and when you're using a word, and if you pause too long, does that change the meaning of things? It's a wildly complex issue. Okay? When you look, if we're saying you cannot discriminate based upon sex, right? Does transsexual or transgendered fall into that?
I don't know. No. I don't.
So it's a complex issue, and I'm not mad at you. You're being like, well, I don't know. Like, I get that. It's incredibly complex, right? Y'all will understand when you go to write your essay. When is your essay due in here? Third? Sorry, 17th. Third is your test. It's due the 17th.
Yeah.
It's not due the 10th.
No.
Okay.
Well,
I think that means my U.S. class is due the 10th, but I thought I told them the 17th. We'll see. Okay. I didn't want to have to grade them all over Thanksgiving, but whatever. Your case that you look up where you're writing a dissenting opinion is going to deal with issues like this and sort of where lines are drawn. All right. So I want you to understand that. All right. I mean, my general philosophy is you can't discriminate based on sex, then theoretically, if we have deviations within gender at this point, right? And that's another fascinating concept. What's the difference between gender and sex?
What is the difference?
I don't know.
Okay, we're going. I'm looking.
I mean, like, honestly, like, look, I'm gonna be honest with you, there has to be a difference, otherwise we would just have one word for it.
Okay. Gender is not necessarily defined by biological sex. A person's gender may or may not correspond to their biological sex. Gender is more about identity and how we feel about ourselves. People may self-identify as male or female.
But see, that can't be accurate, because that wasn't true 50 years ago. The term gender existed 50 years ago when gender like, I don't know, is gender like a variation between masculinity and femininity, and therefore it's a
Yeah.
sliding scale?
It says,
And some people are more masculine than other people? Like, I mean,
it says in the
But if it's
late 1960s and early 1970s, feminists are the people who changed gender and sex. Like, that's what
but if it's a term that can't be, like, I'm gonna be honest with you, if it's a term that can't be defined, then it's a term that you can't use legally. Because if you can't define it, it can't exist within a rule of law. Do you understand that? Because rule of law says the law has to be applied equally to everybody. Right? That's equal protection of the laws. Right? But if we're using words that nobody can define, how can we apply them correctly? Okay? Alright, sexual harassment would be a part of this, but it's not. I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not testing you on that. Because sexual harassment is really different than discrimination. You understand that? Okay? I mean, it typically falls in the same way, because if you're looking, just so you understand, the reason why sexual harassment would fall under discrimination is because sexual harassment is generally looking at like unsafe work environments, which is generally a discriminatory behavior against a subset of the population, because you're making it unsafe or hostile. Let's use the term hostile, right? It's a hostile work environment for a subset of the population. Okay? Equal employment. So I do need you to see there. We did have an Equal Pay Act. It is technically illegal to have pay discrimination. Okay? Now, because a couple of you were like, "Wait a minute, that didn't make sense." Okay? I want you to understand again the complexity of this issue, right? Because if two of you in this room go and apply for a job right now, right, and they offer one of you $7.25 an hour and the other one of you $8 an hour, right, is that discriminatory in nature? Maybe, but how are you going to prove it? Okay? Because people do not have the same background, the same work experience. I mean, the reality is when you look at, have y'all heard about like the statistics in terms of like pay gaps? Right? You know that women make like 70 cents to the dollar. So for every dollar a man makes, a woman makes 70 cents. Right? For every dollar a white guy makes, a black man makes 75 cents. Right? For every dollar a white man makes, a black woman makes like 55 cents. No? Y'all don't know what I'm talking about? So here's the thing. And this is one of those conversations where you need to understand sort of the concept of lies, damn lies, and statistics. Right? A lot of the times when you see that data set, it's looking at all people's, all job levels, all incomes, all educational backgrounds and experiences, and everything like that. Right? It does not take into account individual factors in decision making. Okay? And the reality is look at like school teachers as an example, right? How many of you in here had how many of you in here had more than 3 male elementary school teachers? Okay, what'd you say?
I didn't have a single one.
You didn't have a single male element. So here's the thing, right? You understand that there's like, we actually have this term, conception, it's called a pink collar job, right? Like nursing is historically been a pink collar job, right? If you compare a teacher to a heart surgeon, right? You understand the teacher is going to make less, yes? I don't care about anything else other than the jobs, right? I could be an elementary school teacher after a 4-year college degree. I'll be honest with you, I think you should be able to teach elementary school after you graduated from high school, right? Like you probably only really need to be one level ahead, right? Maybe an associate's.
Yeah.
Okay? To teach high school, you probably need to be a college graduate. But like, let's be honest. How hard is elementary school math? Like, I can do elementary school math. And I am terrible at math. Right? Like, I could teach my daughter about clouds, right? But I'm not trying to do chemistry. Not happening. Alright? So the requirements, the expectations, the degree requirements, the amount of time in school is significantly lower. It would make sense for an elementary school teacher to make less than a heart surgeon, yes? Regardless of gender. I would expect a female heart surgeon to make more than a male elementary school teacher. Right? But because we have societal expectations, right, and we have societal traditions, women typically become teachers. Right? Women typically, hopefully y'all never have to professionally deal with a social worker in your life, but that is a job that is predominantly female. Right? And social workers are not very well paid. Taking those and comparing them to jobs, right, all jobs across the board doesn't necessarily make sense. I do want to at least point this out because we have seen some significant advancements, and you never know because I had a big shoot. I'm actually going to change one of your readings for the end of this semester, and we're going to read about World War IV. Well, with 3, 4, and 5 all at the same time. You're going to read an article about what would happen if the United States had to go to war with China, Russia, and Iran all at the same time. Spoiler alert, we'd lose. Yeah. Oh, we definitely lose. Dude, we would lose to China alone. We can't beat China. Okay. But we have made some advancements as far as gender goes. Women are now open for all jobs in the military. Women can serve in combat positions. That used to not be true, right? So when I first joined the Marine Corps, you couldn't have a woman in the infantry. Now you can have women in the infantry, right? Now the downside to that is if we really want gender equality, ladies, you may one day find yourself having to sign up for the draft and possibly get drafted into the military.
It's so
Look, I'm just saying, you want equality, right? Hispanics are another group. Just again, this is now example based. Obviously, Hispanics were a discriminated against group, right? In fact, when we look at governmental discrimination, so you understand, right? Some of those levels of scrutiny, and specifically strict scrutiny is going to always apply to any subset of the population in which there was historical discrimination. You understand that? So for the government, and here's what I want you to understand. Look, do we know what affirmative action is? Are y'all with me today? Y'all just sat in the auditorium all morning and now you're bored and you don't want to think about life. Shocked some of y'all's phones aren't dead. Haven't sat in an auditorium all morning. Whatever. Wish they were. Alright. You understand affirmative action is a discriminatory policy. By nature. Right? Because you're looking at subsets of the population and you're discriminating. But I want you to understand, right, that if you have a policy that might be mildly discriminatory against white people, that is going to have a different level of scrutiny than a policy that is mildly discriminatory against black people, because black people have faced historical discrimination in the United States, yes? You should learn that in U.S. history. This should not be done. It's not up for debate. Not up for debate. White people have not faced historical discrimination in the United States. Not up for debate. Right? So even if you had sort of the same policy, one that affected whites and one that affected blacks, the level of scrutiny that goes into it is different. Okay? And I want you to understand that. I don't care about the DREAM Act. I actually don't even really care about Trump and his immigration policies. I mean, at some point in time, it would probably be really interesting to have a conversation as to whether or not the Constitution applies to people in Mexico. Right? It's just out of curiosity, does it? Does the Constitution apply to immigrants that are not U.S. citizens? Yeah. I mean, let's say they've actually made it across the border now and they live here. Y'all know that Trump, like, banned people from a couple of different countries from coming here, yes? Hey, listen to me, that's not nearly as bad as what you think. There's like 30 different Muslim majority countries in the United States. He banned people from 6 of them. Hey, if you wanna tell me that that's a ban on all Muslims entering the country, you're more than welcome to have that opinion. And just so you understand, North Korea was also on that list of people that could, not that anybody's allowed out of North Korea, but you know, you also cannot come to the United States from North Korea. Well, because in Trump's mind, those were places that were politically unstable, well, are politically unstable, therefore there's no way to, like, vet those, the immigrants coming, right? So, in order to immigrate into the United States, like, there's a whole bunch of processes that have to happen, right? In order to try to ensure that you're not letting in somebody who's immediately gonna turn around and, like, try to blow up the Capitol building. Yeah? And if you have war-torn countries that are politically unstable, right, you are gonna have a significantly harder time with the screening process. Because you're not gonna be able to conduct interviews with neighbors, you're not gonna be able to, like, verify application information with the government of the country that they're coming from, right? I mean, the reality is you should put China and North Korea on that list just because the government of those 2 countries aren't gonna be honest with the United States anyways, right? I mean, those are totalitarian regimes that are not gonna tell the United States what's really going on.
Wait, so what countries weren't?
I'd have to go back and look. It was Syria, Iran, North Korea, Yemen, Oman might have been one. There was one in Africa, and I forget which because there's like a dozen African Muslim nations in like north and like Somalia is predominant. It wasn't Somalia. No, maybe it was Somalia. Yeah, because of all the piracy there. That's the problem. Somalia was on there because of the piracy.
So what's stopping somebody from like in Oman crossing the border into Saudi Arabia and then from there going to the United States?
Because they would have to have, if they've got all their information like in the Saudi system, but the U.S. would be basically, because we have good relationships with Saudi Arabia, like Saudi Arabia would be helping to verify the information, like here is the citizen, here is their address, but because they're essentially an illegal immigrant into Saudi Arabia, they're not gonna be in the Saudi system.
So would they have to be a citizen in Serbia?
I mean, yeah, I guess theoretically, if you became a Saudi citizen, right, and Saudi Arabia took you in and you lived there for some number of years and then you applied to be an American or to immigrate into the United States, then maybe, although I'm gonna tell you right now, our immigration system in this country sucks anyways. It's terrible. It's wildly convoluted, it's ridiculously difficult to get into this nation. It's overly difficult to get into this nation. It's ridiculously expensive. If you apply to immigrate into the United States, you have to pay a fee, right? And then if they tell you no, you're just out the money. And then you apply again the next year, you pay the fee again.
How much is the fee?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but if you're talking about people that are coming from more impoverished nations that are trying to like get economic opportunity here, even if it's $100, shoot, I know Americans that don't have $100 in their pocket to pay for the chance of going somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, and then when you look, I mean, I actually used one of my wife's friends. So my wife had a friend who was actually Mexican, right, living in North Carolina. Her parents were green card holders in North Carolina. When she turned 18, it was technically illegal for her to stay in the United States, even though her parents were here legally. And I'm not sure why that is. She went back to Mexico, right, graduated from some university there, got a nursing degree. Her parents, while she was getting her nursing degree, naturalized. Like, they passed the citizenship test, they are American citizens, right? Carolina speaks, obviously, fluent Spanish, fluent English, right? Her parents are now American citizens. That girl applied 6 times to come back to the United States, and every time she was told no. Which is ridiculous considering that 1, her parents are U.S. citizens, and 2, the like, things that they're looking for is that you already have like family here that would help you, and you have like marketable skills. The woman is a nurse. We don't have enough nurses in this country. Like those two things alone, you think she would have been at the top of the list. How much? 1,400, 1,040? That's over $1,000, yeah, 1,140? That's ridiculous, that's too much. $1,000, that's too much. And I'm telling you right now, that's not, like, it don't cost $1,000 to like, look at all that paperwork. It just doesn't. Alright, okay, you should probably know about this, you can't do this case anyways, you can't do quarter amount suit. But that's bad. Oh, and then yeah, Native Americans don't even become citizens of the United States. Actually, like 100 years ago. They became U.S. citizens 100 years ago. Oh, this one does matter, because this one will be on the test. Right? ADA will absolutely be on the test. Right? So you cannot discriminate against people with disabilities. Okay? Provided, just so you understand, provided it's after 1990. Right? Like, if you go to a school, like let's say you go to a school that was built in 1960, right? And it's a 2-story school, that school does not necessarily have to have an elevator. Right? Because it existed before 1990. If you renovate the school, you have to put an elevator in so that handicapped people can get to the 2nd floor. Okay? Any business that is opening, like, gotta have handicap accessible bathrooms. You've gotta have, a ramp or something like that in order to allow, or motion and mobility and whatnot. Okay? That is a provision of law. It is unfunded, right? So, like, when LCISD redid the, what is that thing called? The press box at Trailer Stadium. You know what I'm talking about? I don't know. How long ago did we do that now? Like 3-4 years? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Okay. The old press box back there, because I used to coach football, like I felt like that thing was gonna like fall off. Like, what is it, George Ranch Foster game before y'all ever opened? And like those games used to be real rowdy. Like I felt like I was gonna die that night. I thought that like press box was gonna fall off the back of the stadium and just collapse. It did not have an elevator because Trailer Stadium was built before 1990. Okay? But any public accommodations after that have to be accessible, right? You have to make reasonable accommodations, right? You would not like, God forbid I lost like the use of my legs, right? Like if I was in an accident on the way home today and I don't have any legs tomorrow, I can't get fired for that, right? LCISD would have to make accommodations for me in order for me to continue working. You understand? Okay. LGBTQ, this is at least somewhat significant. There are a couple of things that I want to point out here, right? I think I told you yesterday, 1969 is really the first sort of massive movement as far as gay rights go. But we do get a couple of provisions, right? So when I was in the Marine Corps, there was a policy called Don't Ask, Don't Tell, right? Like you could be gay in the military, but you was not allowed to be out the closet. Okay? And nobody could ask you if you were in the closet. That was the don't ask part. Right? So like they couldn't ask you and you couldn't volunteer the information. Obama got rid of that. You can be openly gay now. Okay? Which interestingly enough then got into like, I actually like know somebody who was in the they were going to sue. They were actually going to sue the military. She was going to sue to get her wife like spousal benefits from the military. Obviously she's a lesbian. And the Air Force just gave it to her, so it didn't matter. Right? We already talked about affirmative action. Okay, this is now out of date because last year we got rid of that in, there it is. Right? Students for fair admission be Harvard. There is no more race being taken into account in college admissions. No, race cannot be a factor anymore. All right, we're done. That took too long. I'm sorry. You got 5 minutes.